Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So today we're going to be doing series who's Nintendo going after and why are they going after them now, but in this instance it's going to be a complete reversal because it's Nintendo themselves that are having a really bad week, technically really bad last week, because with the Game Freak leaks and getting cut using emulation in their own museum in Japan, Nintendo definitely isn't having the best of times right now. We're going to go over all of it and what it means to emulation moving forward because it is still relevant to that topic. Before we get too far involved, though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And I will say off the top, some of the headlines from this Game Freak leak are absolutely freaky in all of the wrong ways, and I'm not going to go too deep into it. I'm sure you can find the articles in and of themselves, but some of the content that actually came out on these leaks, not something that Nintendo would ever want getting out there. They are known as a family-friendly company. Most of their properties are definitely not controversial in any way, shape, or form, so some of the information that has come out has been something that no one would ever expect to see in a game leak. And just so you know, there's not going to be any footage of any of the games, source code or otherwise, that came from these leaks. I'm never showing that on the channel, and if you are a YouTuber, I can't recommend enough that you stay away from it like a country miles wide. It is absolutely nuclear and toxic. Do not show it in a video. You have been warned by me. But honestly, this leak and this next sentence that I've highlighted and not read are a terrible look for Nintendo and Game Freak, obviously so. If you want to comment about it down below, just don't use the words you're thinking about using. I don't want to have any issues in the comments. But honestly, with the Palworld lawsuit going on the actual patents, it's not a good time for anything to leak because this can and will be used in Palworld's defense if they can find something inside of it that would be beneficial to them. And honestly, this isn't just what you want to have happen. You don't want your source code out there. You don't want any of that leaking from the company. All of these different prototypes, code names for the Switch 2, all of the different names for upcoming Pokemon games, even talking about new planned Pokemon movies and animated series. This is basically the roadmap for where the Pokemon series is going to go next, and you know Nintendo controls a lot of that. So seeing something like this isn't good news. It's not just that Nintendo looks foolish, it's that now they're going to go triple down extra hard on anything they think that they can strike off the internet. And again, a secondary warning, trust me, do not use these content from the leaks in any sort of videos whatsoever. You're only inviting issues to yourself, and you can tell that I'm only using news articles and talking about it here, so it is fair use, perfectly fine, and I'm not showing anything that I shouldn't be showing. But the timing of this is very interesting, and again, it's going to paint Nintendo in a bad light, and they're not a company that likes to be painted into the corner very often whatsoever, so it'll be really interesting to see how things shake out from here, because the last gigantic Giga leak from Nintendo, they did poke a little bit here and there, but they were relatively don't talk about it, don't create the Streisand effect. I feel like now with their current situation where they basically want to go after absolutely anything they do not like, you might see a lot more of these DMCA strikes or even lawsuits going around. And again, if there's anything in any of the information that is out there now that could be beneficial to Palworld's defense, it'll definitely show up in any pending lawsuits as far as the defense is concerned, or the source code on some of the patents, anything like that could and may be useful to Palworld, so we'll just have to wait and see. But this is not a good situation for Nintendo to be in, and when they feel like they're on the back foot and feel defensive, that's when they go 3 times as hard against anything they do not like. So it will be really interesting to see what they decide to do with this. My guess is going to be that they're going to go the absolute nuclear route and try to decimate anyone who goes anywhere near this sort of stuff. Sure, you might be able to put a photo up on Twitter, you might be able to talk about it on a forum, but honestly, again, don't be uploading videos on YouTube of any of this beta footage of any of these projects. I just don't think it's going to go well for you. I certainly won't be doing it, but everyone gets to make their own choice. But honestly, again, some of the stuff coming out of this leak is going to be very unfriendly towards Nintendo, and I'm sure we'll get to learn more about it later on as time goes on, because it is just getting parsed through right now. But one of the funnier things, and the other half of this video, is Nintendo got caught using software emulation in their own museum in Japan for Super Nintendo games. This is the company that has been doing a full court press against software emulation, telling people for years that it is not allowed, that ROMs are illegal, every single thing under the sun, and they decided, hey, we're just going to emulate our own games. And there is something absolutely hilarious about that. Of course, we're not talking about modern gen stuff like Yuzu or Suyu, or even stuff like Ryujinx. We're talking about Super Nintendo, and that is a different type of platform, and it isn't modern. And I understand you guys like to comment and say it was kind of foolish for a company like Ryujinx to go after modern emulation, and I understand that to a degree. I still think it would be found to be permissible, but it is one of those things we're talking about Nintendo's current gen console, and basically their current revenue stream outside of licensing, film and television, things such as that. And trust me, Nintendo isn't a game company anymore. They are a media company and a brand company. Their characters are worth more than anything, and they can make a metric fortune on Mario movies compared to making Mario games, which still of course bring in a ton of cash, but it takes longer and the rewards are not as good. But this is just, again, so interesting to see the company that absolutely hates software emulation in every way, shape, or form using an emulator in their own museum. And before you think to yourself, well, it's just the easier way to do things, that is true, but you know full well if Nintendo needed a dozen Super Famicoms and a dozen copies of Super Mario World, they could just walk into a room somewhere and pick them up off the shelf. This is not something that they do not have on hand. So this is kind of actually amusing to me, and this is to credit Chris Mac32 here. He went to the Nintendo Museum in Japan, and I will leave a link to his Twitter below for proper accreditation, and he found this Super Mario World kiosk where there's multiple games being played at the same time. You'll see here there is a Super Famicom controller hooked up via USB-C, and he wiggled it back and forth, seems to be glued in there, and a very familiar tone actually occurred when he wiggled it back and forth. I'm going to let you listen, keep your ears open, and you're going to see exactly what Nintendo is up to these days. If you couldn't hear it, that was the Windows USB unplug and plug in sound effect. Those hot swappable devices, plug in a new mouse, plug in a new keyboard, plug in a controller to Windows, and you're going to get that tone coming out when it connects and disconnects. So obviously Nintendo is just using software emulation for their own museum, which is totally fine, because what I've been saying since the beginning of these videos is emulation is legal as far as we know it. And yes, I understand we're not talking about the current gen stuff, we're talking about Super Nintendo, but Nintendo goes absolutely everything that they can possibly go after, and it is my firm belief that they want a situation in which only the rights holders can use software emulation and nobody else can for every single hardware platform they have ever designed. And we're going to get into using their own words in just a moment off their website, but again, you have to remember that Nintendo is basically the Disney of the video game world. They're going to go after absolutely anything they possibly can, including stuff like just box art images on Steam Grid database if you want to add games to your own Steam Deck, if you own the console and the hardware and the game itself and you've dumped it properly. They still don't want you to even have the box art, and they even talk about this on different regions in their websites. They're saying that it is not allowed to make a backup of your own video game. They are trying to change the language around this, because for the longest time it has been understood that you can make a backup of your own software, one copy for your own preservation and safety. But Nintendo's trying to basically change the language here. They're saying that video games should not be categorized as software only, even if that is exactly what they are. They are software. They take the source code, they produce a build, an executable, that's what runs on your system. That is software in every understanding of the word that we've ever understood it. But this is Nintendo trying to change the thinking out there and get the world they want. And they're going to say, therefore, provisions that pertain to backup copies would not apply to copywritten video games. So basically, if this is true, what Nintendo is saying here is backing up software and emulating it would not be permitted because it violates the law. And that would be a law that Nintendo would have to adhere to too. Just because you own the copyright, if they're saying it's not legal to make that backup, it seems like Nintendo got caught playing a little bit of their own game here on software emulation. If you go over to the Australian website, and I am telling you that I'm changing regions because things do change from here to there, they just love to say that emulators are used for nothing but software piracy, which is not in fact the case in any way, shape, or form. There are hundreds of thousands, probably close to 1 million people out there that own the hardware, own the games, and choose to play them in the manner in which they would like to. Nintendo's going to say here, a Nintendo emulator allows for Nintendo console-based or arcade games to be played on unauthorized hardware. The video games are obtained by downloading illegal copied software. So I guess what Nintendo is saying is they illegally downloaded Super Mario World for their own museum and decided just to run with it. And this isn't the first time Nintendo's been caught doing something like this because they've definitely repackaged files they found on the internet and released them on their eShop and Virtual Console networks, and those files had indications in the actual hexadecimal code that they were from scene releases by certain groups. So Nintendo just really isn't having a very good week, and we'll continue to see how that goes for them, and I'll continue to cover these topics so long as everyone enjoys watching them. But one more warning on all of that information that came out: if you're thinking about making a video about it, just talk about it, don't show it. Trust me, you're going to have a lot easier time. Hopefully Nintendo doesn't go after you if you show footage, but my guess would be they most definitely will. But short of that, we are done, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.